Welcome. My name is Bristow, and it is not my birthday. I'm one of the pastors here. Actually, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and so that's exciting. And I've got some Super Bowl celebratory balloons here. Real quick, how many of you, with hands raised, are going to watch the Super Bowl today? Raise your hands. Okay, and I mean even a snippet. Just tune in. How many? Raise your hand. Keep your hands up. Okay, look around. That's like everybody. That's amazing. You can put your hands down. You will be joining, this is crazy, 100 million Americans watching the Super Bowl in a few hours. Isn't that crazy? That's a lot of people. This is the statistic that I like, though, that tomorrow morning, 8 million people will call their boss, tell their boss that their team lost or something, and they're too sick to work, and then hang up. That's good. 8 million. I love that statistic. Okay, let me ask you one more question. How many true blue, either Chiefs fans, and I don't mean Chiefs and Broncos, or, I mean that's your team, Chiefs, or 49ers fans are there? Raise your hands. Okay. Quickly put them down. Quickly, for your own safety, put them down. That's good. Greg, why don't you come and take these? I was gonna award you with these balloons, but the thing is, if we give them to you, we won't have them for next service. So just I hadn't thought it through completely, but I'm working it, and you know me, right? So that doesn't surprise you probably. I think though, think about the forest of hands that were raised before, and then just a smattering. I think that proves my contention that the Super Bowl is about more than just the football. There's something bigger going on there, and I think that it's more than just the commercials. I mean, the commercials are funny and all, but they're pretty predictable. I mean, you can be assured that you're going to see a talking green lizard trying to sell you car insurance a couple of times, at least. Halftime, that's pretty cool, actually. They do a great job with that. But 100 million people watching J-Lo sing. We like J-Lo, but, I just think that there's more going on here. I think that why 100 million people tune in is for the snacks. I think really it's about the Super Bowl snacks. And I found a great website. It's a true University of North Carolina, the top 10 trending Super Bowl snacks for 2020. That's amazing, right? And we can't go through them all, but I just thought we'd quickly go through the top 5. If you're a Chiefs fan, there's Kansas City barbecue. If you're a 49ers fan, there's San Francisco seafood. Coming in at number 4 is a bean dip with a refried bean football on it. Very nice. Coming in at number 3 are football-shaped pizza bits. Coming in at number 2 is another kind of dip. I don't know what kind of dip, but it's in a bread bowl in the shape of a football. Very nice. And coming in at number 1 are chocolate-covered strawberries in the shapes of football. Very nice. I just thought that, Vineyard of the Rockies, we'd kind of help you raise the bar. If you're where I am, you're still stuck at saltines with Cheese Whiz on them. That's where you're really at. But in a more serious vein, actually, I think that there is more going on with the Super Bowl event in America than just the football or the, snacks or the halftime. I think it reveals something about us, actually. I think it reveals a need for connectedness, both with our friends and family, but also culturally and even with the people in the stadiums. I think it reveals maybe a need for a shared experience, maybe even a longing for a connectedness. Now, I grew up, when I was a kid, I grew up in the United States, but also outside the United States. And when I was an adult, I lived in the United States, but also outside of the United States for over a decade. And I know that the lack of connectedness that I feel here isn't everywhere in the world. It's actually kind of unique to to this country. And when you think about it, how this country was formed, it was formed by people who came across the oceans, left their connectedness and their systems of connectedness, their culture, their language, their traditions, their families, their friends, their tribes, whatever, and came to a land where connectedness had not yet been built. And I think that connectedness is still being built. And it's always been that way in the United States. It's interesting. In the 1830s, there was a French sociologist by the name of Alex de Tocqueville. And he said this about kind of the American experiment, the new burgeoning nation that was being built. He said, in their abundance, there's a strange melancholy. Interesting. Let's fast forward to Fort Collins 2020. How is it that we live in one of the most desirable places in the nation? We're always on those lists of the best places to live. And at the same time, we have one of the very highest suicide rates in the nation. In their abundance, there's a strange melancholy. And that melancholy is experienced. Yes, it's a lack of connectedness, but it's experienced as loneliness. It's experienced as depression sometimes, and it's experienced as hopelessness. That's how it's experienced. But the good news of Jesus Christ is this, that no matter what you feel, your reality, if you've accepted Christ into your life, is that you are connected. You are connected vertically. You're connected to Christ, through whom all things were created, and he created you. And at the same time, you're connected horizontally with your brothers and sisters in Christ. You're organically connected. So check out this cool verse from 1 Corinthians. It says, but you are the body of Christ. He says we're connected like a body, like a human body. And no matter what body part you are, you're connected, and each one of you is a part of it. That's good news. So what we're trying to do at Vineyard of the Rockies is this. We're trying to construct on-ramps so that reality, being in Christ, connected with Christ and each other, becomes your experience. And so what we're going to do is we're going to bring up two really good friends, and Josh and Jacquie. These are people, come on up, guys, who have experienced the reality of being connected to Christ and connected to each other. And so let's give them a hand, Jacquie Bond and Josh Kalsbeek. Okay, so I made it. We'll start with Jacquie. Jacquie, you are married with children.
I am.
Yeah.
They're right there.
Right there. There they are. Very nice. Thanks for supporting. And you are a nurse who trains other nurses.
Yes, I train nurses and doctors how to use lasers and all those fun things. So it keeps me busy.
Yeah. And you guys have been here for 10 years, and you joined a small group this fall.
Yes. As time had been going on, I didn't want to become the family that would come to church and then really didn't have a connection with anyone else. Mm-hmm. You know, there was actually a acquaintance who was talking to my husband, and he was saying that he doesn't go here to Vineyard, but he was saying that he was having the experience where he would go and he would leave, and he had no idea who anybody was, and they didn't know him. So we had been here for a little over 10 years, and we did not take the opportunity to become part of the group.
So in your experience, what's been hard about being in a small group for you, or you and Bill?
I think one of the hard things that we had to overcome was the commitment, you know, to say, yes, we're going to do this. And then it was a little scary, because joining like a small group, there are some things that you just don't really want to let go of. For example, they don't know me. Yeah. I don't know them. Yeah. And there's some situations where you're thinking, in order for someone to be able to, pray for me, I need to be able to reach out. And it's like, you know what? You don't know me. And I don't know you, and I can barely take on my own stuff. I don't know if I want to take on yours. So, it's kind of a risk jumping out. But for Bill and I, the biggest thing that we had to work past was childcare. Do they have childcare? Are they going to be safe? Is this going to cost me money? If it's going to cost me money, now I've got to put it in the budget. I don't know if I have it in the budget. It's like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Lots
of
excuses.
I didn't.
Yeah.
So.
What was it that finally kind of got you through that threshold and you guys actually showed up?
To be completely honest, we saw that there was a small group where children were welcome, and it was on a Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
And we're like, cool. Yes, cool. We're going to do it.
Yep, and we've got a couple of those.
Yeah.
2 for the next season. Okay, and this is Josh. Josh is married with child.
Yes. Yeah, so my wife, if any of you know her, is amazing, and her name is Allie. She's the pastor of Kids, Family, and Marriage here, and in case I leave suddenly, it's because she's giving birth to our first child, our son. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're lucky to have him, and he could leave at any moment. So just know that. And for work, you're a therapist.
Yes, I am. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Right. So for you, Josh, what has been hard about small groups in your experience?
Well, first, I want to not be a very good listener and not answer your question directly. I want to just back up a little bit because I'm struck by what you said and the cultural moment that we find ourselves in. I think we're experiencing a collapse of community. And while maybe in what was it, 1830, you were quoting, there wasn't as deep community, according to research, we're actually going backwards, and loneliness is growing. One study showed that in 1984, the number of people that had 3 friends that they could confide in, that they could really trust and share anything with, was 59%. And then in 2004, it had dropped to 37%. So over time, we're losing friends. And the number of people that had no friends, no one that they trusted, no one that they could really share anything with, was 10% in 1984 and moved up to 25% in 2004. So if we are at all normative, then at least a quarter of the people here feel like there's no one that I really know and trust that deeply.
And you've seen that in your practice?
It's commonplace, so much so that I think it's almost like we can feel like it's normal, like that not really knowing and trusting people deeply is a normal and everyday thing. Yeah. So I'll now try to answer your original question.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
I did remember.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's right there, so that helps. I really resonated with what Jacquie said, that it requires commitment. I think it's a process, right? You don't just come to know someone quickly and trust them quickly. Like my first date with Allie was amazing, but we didn't get married that day, right? It's a process and it takes time. And so then I find myself like, I have to commit to this. And that requires faith of giving over time and showing up. And then there's real risk in that, to where I could experience rejection. I could have people not interested back in me, or betrayal. I think if we're showing up, really, over time, there's going to be conflict. But even like that assumes we're showing up. I think Sunday morning is amazing. Thank you for being here. Otherwise, we'd be talking to no one.
To empty room.
But it's not like community. It's not deep community.
Yeah.
I think there's worship, there's preaching, there's prayer, and that is essential. But it's not what can happen in a small group. And so until we take that commitment to invest in being known deeply by others and knowing them, and like Jacquie was saying, like, I don't know if I want to trust you with my stuff or really care and risk to know your story, we're not going to get there.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's hard about being in a small group. So that's a great segue. That's just so compelling. Like, oh, that's where the change happens. You know, we can come up and pray, but the change happens in that context. Then.
Well, yeah, it's a transition from Sunday morning. If we just show up and don't go to a small group during the week or Sunday afternoon, then it can feel like a crowd, right? Where we don't really know people and we're not known by others. But if you flip that and you're going to small groups, I've found like then Sunday morning becomes like a vibrant place. It's not like a lonely place because I know people and I'm looking forward to seeing them and connecting even more. Yeah,
Jacquie, that happened to you and Bill, right? I mean, it changed things.
Oh yeah,
in the big group even.
It did. It was really wonderful. You just for the soul to be able to come and I can see people that I recognize, you know, as compared to just coming in and then leaving.
Yeah.
But it also opened up the ability to establish friendships.
Yeah.
And to be able to feel that there is somebody else, you know, trying to do the adulting thing and the parenting thing and just life.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we get this impression that we're supposed to do this by ourselves.
Right.
And that if we have to ask for help, then something is inherently wrong, that we didn't do something correctly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I even just had an experience a couple weeks ago. I needed to have a procedure done on my hip. And the time that they wanted me to be down to Loveland for this procedure, it just did not go with life at all. I was wondering, okay, who's going to get child 1 and who's going to get child 2 and how is this going to work out? And Bill wasn't able to take off work and, you know, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I actually said, I guess I'll call Uber, you know, to pick me up from my house to get me to where I need to be. And then it hit me.
Yeah.
There was someone in my small group who happened to be an Uber driver, but I called him and I texted him and I said, is there any way that you would be able to get me to Loveland? I live in Fort Collins here. And I felt really uncomfortable, so uncomfortable, you know, because as a nurse, there are certain things that we just pride ourselves on, efficiency, organization, you know, all those. And to me, that was completely out. And he came back with, absolutely. Yep. You know, and so there was that connection. Mm-hmm. And he was able to pray for me. And he, nice. You know, he followed up and asked, how are you doing? Things like that. That
Family.
Wouldn't have just
That's
come
awesome.
Just...
No,
you know,
it's
if there
there or it's not there. Well, let's move to our second question. How have small groups changed you personally?
I think the biggest way, there's many, but one of the ones that just sticks with me is it's changed my prayer life, and it's also changed the way I see servant leadership. When I was going to school, I went to a Jesuit university. I'm not Catholic, but the Jesuits are really, really big into like how can we be in the community? How can we serve the community? How can we serve others? how ought we to live, things like that. But servant leadership had become a really big part of me. And it's not putting yourself out there where you're going to be abused and misused and things like that. It's how may I help you? How can I be of service to you? And I was thinking for the longest period of time that it had nothing to do with my personal life and things that were, in my current sphere. I thought it was more lofty, like this has to be to like your work situation or community service or something like that. But then I started to realize that I can take that and apply it toward the small group, to the people that I'm beginning to build relationship with. And then I realized I can do that toward my kids. How will I best be able to serve them? And then on the last part of it, how can I serve or work with my husband? Sometimes that can be a challenge. So it really helped that. And then
listen up,
prayer.
guys.
And so
that's awesome.
It was in that moment that I realized that it's more personal. It's there.
I like how there's kind of a deepening of life itself. I'm hearing a deeper, richer life that's possible. You want to change. Josh, how have small groups changed your life?
I think they've transformed my life. I used to be a very fearful person. I had a lot of anxiety, and I was afraid of what other people thought of me. And I really lived out of that fear, but so much so I wasn't even very aware of it. It was like the air I breathed. It was just normal for me to have high anxiety. Like what I'm doing right now, I would have never done. And that's no offense to any of you. I just would have been too terrified to do it. And it wasn't until I was in a small group that really was living out their faith in an authentic way, that they were being like really real. They were talking about things like their sexual abuse, things like trauma that they had experienced, conflict in their marriage, addiction, pornography, the things that that I didn't really hear, say, on a Sunday morning. I didn't hear people talking about that, let alone in my friendships. It wasn't until I was in a small group where people were being really real that it opened a door for me, and it gave me permission to open up and be real and share my experience. Yeah. And out of that, that was like the most terrifying thing I had ever done, but it brought healing. And one of the surprising things is it influenced my career choices, because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, so to speak, 12 years ago. And I think I would go so far as to say, like, I knew Jesus and I knew I was loved, but I was in many ways lost. I didn't have hope. And I just got into a season of life where I was depressed, and a very real option for me was to take my life. My uncle committed suicide when I was young, and I just was believing the lies of my shame. And it wasn't until I really chose to open up to other people and take that risk and experience God's love through them that I went from hating myself and living just with fear every day, and coping in really unhealthy ways and hurting people around me, experiencing God's love just through people, right? Over time. It didn't happen overnight. but that opened me up to. I don't remember exactly when it was, like 6-7 years ago. I looked in the mirror and realized I like myself. Like I like who I see, and so I've grown in peace and in courage. One thing, like I grew up really not knowing the value of knowing myself and talking about my feelings. It was kind of like, that's not a masculine or a manly thing to do. That's kind of weakness. And no one ever said that to me. It's just kind of the meaning that I took growing up. And it wasn't really modeled for that for me, even though I never questioned like my parents' love, and I felt like I grew up in a loving home. But it was out of really being known by others and risking and confessing my sin that I experienced that kind of freedom and breakthrough to where now I see like sharing my emotions and my feelings as a strength. And if I'm not wanting to do that, then I'm probably avoiding something.
Yeah. Wow. I'm convicted myself that, I haven't done the hard work that you've done, and there's a richness.
6 years of therapy and
yeah. And big bills.
There's that, but I think we can also discount what we've done, and it's hard to sometimes see the growth. For some of us, maybe we're in community and we're committed to small groups, but I think something that can prevent growing deeper is just the consumeristic culture, like we were talking about, like you were talking about earlier. We can ask questions of the church, like, what can you do for me? Like, is this small group going to serve my needs? How will this work with my schedule? And they're not bad questions. But I think there's better questions. Another perspective we can have is maybe not being a consumer, but being more of a critic, right? We're good at analyzing, and so we kind of stay at a distance by asking, like, well, how could this be better? Or what's wrong with this? Or what's missing? And those, again, aren't bad questions, but having a posture of being a participant or being a creator of community is asking questions like, who can I serve today? Who can I encourage? And asking God, like, bring someone to me today that I can serve. And that flips it to where then we're participating, we're engaging, and seeing in the opportunity. We're modeling that for other people in small ways, and then it gets returned.
Yeah. Just like Jacquie was saying. Wow. That's some compelling stuff. Let's give them a hand. Thank you guys for sharing. You guys can. I just think something happens in a context of small groups that can't happen anywhere else. And my takeaway is that change is possible. I mean, it was right here. And some of you may have been coming, like Bill and Jacquie, for 10 years, and you haven't actually made that jump where, really the Christian community opens up to you. But it's also the context for serious change. And that's good news, isn't it?